Player Influx. Will esports grow or consolidate?
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on our panel discussion. Today, we're talking about player influx. Will esports grow or will it consolidate? My name is Grant Johnson. I'm the CEO of Esports Entertainment Group. We are a NASDAQ publicly listed iGaming company with a focus on esports, betting and tournament play. I'm your moderator today. Joining me on our panel is EIRIK Christiansen. EIRIK, can you give us a little brief background on yourself?
Sure. Super awesome to be here, and good morning, everyone. I am the CEO of Pixelbet, a forward-leaning endemic esports betting operator. We also have a casino. We have a main focus of Europe. We're holding MGA and SGA licenses. We're a part of the Leo Vegas group. Personally, I used to be a professional esports player way back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Turned poker player, worked with poker for over a decade. And for the past 3-4 years, I've been fully dedicated back in the esports space and basically spend my time for everything esports and especially focused on the betting aspects at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you. Also joining us on our panel today is Jeff Cohen. Jeff, could you give us a bit of a background yourself?
Yeah, so I work with Grant at Esports Entertainment Group. I run our strategy and investor relations. And prior to joining EEG back in July, I was an analyst at Stephens Inc., actually covering the esports and gaming sector. So I've been around the esports and gaming world for a few years now. Really excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, gentlemen. Okay, so clearly there's been lots of attention the last couple of years on esports and the growth in the sector. However, with the COVID pandemic, this has really shone a spotlight on the sector, and growth has been meteoric from basically all angles, particularly during when traditional sports was shut down and what would be traditional sports fans were flocking to get their both their gambling as well as their entertainment from esports. So we've seen a huge rise in users, and definitely it's become more mainstream. But EIRIK, let's start with you in terms of your thoughts and opinions. Will esports continue to grow, or will we start to see some consolidation?
Thanks, Grant. Well, for me, it's very simple, and I don't want to be too biased either. But as you said, it has been meteoric growth in terms of esports during this pandemic. And even though this pandemic has been horrible for a lot of businesses and all over the world, for esports specifically, it's been quite good. And I mean, it's good to see some light in all this darkness as well. And one thing that esports really has shown is that it's sort of immune to social distancing. It continued to different tournaments continued online when traditional sports, as you mentioned, was shut down, and we don't see any signs of it slowing down at all. And specifically around March, April, we saw a huge influx of bettors coming into our sites. And as we are an esports endemic sportsbook, we couldn't really see on our current player base, since we only offer odds on esports. There wasn't like a big change in those players' behaviors, but seeing that big influx, which clearly was a spillover from traditional sportsbooks, entering our site where we have a better market, better offerings for esports specifically, was really amazing. And we were a little bit afraid initially, and it's a question that I sort of get all the time: that will it slow down? How was it only a little, was it just a brief moment of joy, having a couple of months where players came in? But we see that players stick. It has continued, not as parabolically as it was in the first couple of months of the pandemic, but it's still amazing. And I mean, if it continues in this trajectory, I feel like esports has finally sort of gotten to the point that it needs to be at, where the growth is as big as it should and as it deserves. So there's no signs of it slowing down at all. And entering now the high seasons of December, etc. Yeah, it's looking really awesome for esports, that's for sure.
Okay, thanks for that enthusiastic response, EIRIK. Jeff, what are your feelings? Growth, consolidation, both?
Growth and then eventually consolidation. But still, we have years of growth. I agree with EIRIK. I mean, the way I look at it, there's really two pools of players in this ecosystem, and they're both in the very early innings of maturing. So on one hand, you have traditional sports bettors, who are not really very familiar with esports betting. But one of the things the pandemic proved, particularly, we saw this at EEG, was that those bettors will bet on esports. Predominantly the things they know, like the simulations of traditional games, Madden, NBA, FIFA, but they will come and they will bet on esports. It's just a matter of familiarizing themselves a little more with that content and getting them into some of the more hardcore content, but they will. The second pool of players, and I think this is really the opportunity for all of us on this call, is the esports, fans who are not traditional bettors, aren't watching, the Jets or the Giants. They're focused on, they're watching Dota, League of Legends. Those players are hardcore esports fans, but they really haven't been educated around the betting ecosystem. They've never had a product, historically that's been tailored to them, authentic for them. So I think that's, brands like ours can kind of build that brand and get that trust with those customers. And I think that's, a massive opportunity. So both of those pools of customers are really in their early innings. So I think we have, a significant amount of growth ahead of us before we have to, start acquiring other companies in order to grow.
Well, yeah, thanks for that, Jeff, and your views on it. I can share some historical background. I was involved. Yeah, this is going to date me terribly, but I was involved with the online gambling business when it started back in the mid-90s. And when we were a B2B provider, so we were launching companies that wanted to run online sports books and casinos. And those are both very mature industries at the time. So the thought process was this was going to be easy because there's already hundreds of millions of people that like to bet in casinos and sports books. So as the sites lit up in 98, 99, we expected a tidal wave of fans to come on and start betting. That didn't happen. And it really was very intensive marketing to get people comfortable to come online. And the issue there really was, who the hell are these online operators? Do I trust them to give them my credit card? Are they going to steal it? Some did, I'm sure, but it took a while of, the credible players working with the customers until that confidence was there from the consumer side. For me, I see almost the flip side of that, where we have a very tech-savvy, very comfortable consumer base, well-educated, affluent. They're not comfortable with gambling yet. They're getting more comfortable daily as better quality operators come on that they're larger operators, more transparent. They do have controls in place to protect the players. I think one of the problems we experienced in our industry was some of the early adopters were, let's just say, less interested in running compliant and safe sites for the players. I think that caused some headaches. But I agree with both your sentiments that the industry is going to continue to grow, both in terms of the numbers of participants and from a gaming and gambling standpoint. Absolutely. And it just is going to take a little time. We've become somewhat ADD. I think back 96, people were prepared to give it 5-6 years to make it work. Here, if something doesn't happen in 60 days, people start losing their minds. Why? It's the end of the world. EIRIK, how do you feel about that type of commentary?
Well, I think you make some really awesome points. And one thing that people often struggle to do, at least in my opinion, is to compare industries with each other in a sense. And I think you did a really good parallel here, because specifically for me, that comes from also a betting background and been working in the betting space for a long time. Looking how poker evolved as well, it had also a meteoric rise, after the Chris Moneymaker, the Moneymaker effect, as they called it, winning the World Series of Poker main event as a complete amateur, beating some of the best pros, and this huge influx of players. And it sort of had a little bit of similarity to how esports is now. It's a little bit of what you said, the 60 days, and things aren't really happening as a parabolic way or as meteoric as you expected, and then it's a fluke, and it's not worth it. But one thing I want to sort of emphasize as well is that esports is becoming more mature. Like, even though, as Jeff said, we are still in its infancy, and there's such a long way to go, it has sort of proven time and time again that esports legitimizes itself. It has, more and more different other businesses tapping into the esports scene. And I think this sort of continuously influx of products and services that enter the esports market are all, at least almost, catering to unmet demands. And this sort of results in a proliferation of business. And all of these companies are trying to make profit from all these demands, and they're for sure there. And this is what we see now during the pandemic as well. There's so much more acquisitions, there's mergers, there's sponsorships, there's deals at a much higher level than before. But I think also, since I initially sort of opened up with an extremely positive sort of, it's never going to stop growing, at some point there's going to come some consolidation. But I mean, that's a part of all business, and it's healthy. If there's no consolidation, then the business, like the industry as whole, isn't good, because there will be failures, and there will be people entering this space that don't know what they're doing. And they will have investors that don't know what they are doing. And I think one thing that is like the key that I try to emphasize every time I speak on this subject is that to have success in esports, you need to be authentic. And you need to tap into the next generation of in my case, then bettors to enter the space. And as Jeff mentioned as well, to be able to tap into those that aren't traditional bettors, but they love esports, but they won't tolerate any mumbo jumbo. This is not a cowboy business anymore. If you fail them, if you are not transparent, if you're not really, really, authentic to show that, I live and breathe esports, they're going to cut your head off, and it's basically all over. So I think that's like the key for esports to go forward. And there's going to be a lot of actors that aren't as transparent and as authentic, and I think eventually they are going to disappear. And the ones that are going to prevail and sort of manage this consolidation are the ones that are truly authentic and truly wants what is best for esports, but also understands esports.
Good point. So I'm just going to make one, then turn it over to Jeff. One thing that we have to also remember, there's been a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of enthusiastic individuals who are passionate about gaming, and oftentimes passionate about one specific game, and they rush out there, start a business for betting on, pick a title, but it's very focused on Counter-Strike, League, Dota, etc. Very one-trick pony. And they lose sight of the fact that just because it's their passion, it's not a broad enough footprint to be a successful business. So we've seen a lot of those types of mistakes as well. Jeff, what are your thoughts on comments?
Well, I agree. I think you guys have made a lot of good points. I think the things that stuck out to me were sort of three words, authenticity, compliance, and trust. I think we've had a lot of operators in the space that came before, our two companies, and have kind of failed in different aspects of those. They've cut some corners on the compliance side that's run them into trouble. They maybe haven't been authentic with their brand, authentic to esports. Gamers are very fickle beasts. I mean, they will, if you're not authentic, they will sniff it out immediately. And like, EIRIK said so eloquently, I think you said they'll cut your head off. That was a little extreme, but I like it. So I think building that trust and building that brand is really important because, like we said, this is a business that's in there for the long haul. I mean, esports, we are still in the very early innings. I'm not even sure if that Chris Moneymaker event has even happened yet in the esports ecosystem. Maybe it was Booga at the Fortnite World Cup. Maybe it was Ninja, but maybe it hasn't even happened yet. So I think there's a long way to go, and I view that as a positive because there's just so much growth ahead of us. But we do have to be laying the groundwork, doing things the right way. And I think, Pixelbet and EEG are doing that, with the multiple licenses, the tier 1 licenses, we're on the NASDAQ. So I think that gives us a lot of transparency. That's really important, in the space.
Agreed. Well, it sounds like we've got a lot for people to think about, what's been talked about here. the takeaway seems to be a little more patience. The growth is clearly there. We have an affluent player base, better operators, more compliant operators, more transparency, as both EIRIK and Jeff focused in on. For me, as I said, I've seen it before. A little patience is going to go a long way as well. We, are always on the lookout for those who maybe made a couple missteps or maybe can accelerate our growth. So for us, there is some consolidation, but it's really for a focus on acceleration. It's not that we're picking up weak members, we're picking up speed and ones that drive our momentum, and others are also doing the same. But gentlemen, I'm getting kind of the red flag here. It looks like we burned through 15 minutes quicker than I would thought, but that's what happens when you start talking about esports.
Absolutely.
So everybody, thank you for joining EIRIK, Jeff, and I here today. We hope you got something valuable from this presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely. And from my side, at least, don't ever be afraid to reach out if you have any questions for me as well. Reach out on LinkedIn or whatever. I love to discuss anything esports, and I know the two others, Grant and Jeff as well. So, since you can't grab a hold of us physically, grab a hold of us digitally. So.
HR wouldn't like the physical touching.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'd echo that sentiment. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about either our company, esports in general, or anything. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
See you later.